This is the place where we talk about preparing for and navigating adulthood, a space for autistic individuals, families, professionals, and other community stakeholders to get information and resources when it comes to this particular area. We talk about employment, education, high school, college, independence, all of those areas, and connect you to people and organizations that are doing work in this community, as well as share some resources that we've created here at Autism Grown Up. I'm your host, Dr. Tara Regan, and I'm also the Executive Director of Autism Grown Up. You can check us out at autismgrownup.com and continue listening to this episode. Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode of the Autism Grown Up podcast. This week I am talking with Beth Rosenberg, who is the founder of a not-for-profit organization called Techies Unlimited. They're based in New York City, and they focus on teaching computer science and technology to kids, teens, and now young adults that learn differently. I love their mission, which is to open up the field of technology to students with disabilities, especially those on the autism spectrum, to help them become the techies of tomorrow. I just love that alliteration. And Beth shares a little bit about their programming and how their focus on technology has shifted towards a work-based learning, which is something we're a big proponent of here at Autism Grown Up. Work-based learning experiences are excellent preparation for career exploration and getting vocational experience under your belt before you start going out to look for a job, or sometimes it does lead to a job in the end of it. So we get into the Techies Unlimited model, what their staffing ratio looks like, and how they support all of their students' needs, experiences, and knowledge, and how that's shifted over time because they've been open for several years now. Something I do want to note before we get into this episode is that this was actually recorded before the coronavirus pandemic and quarantining, so the programming that we were discussing was happening beforehand. So before this episode aired, I checked in with Beth to see what they are doing and to share some updates, and this is what she said. So here's some info about what we are doing right now. They're providing all workshops from March to June, online and free, and then they're working on promoting and getting the word out about their unique 8-week summer curriculum starting June 29th. And you can check that out all on their website, techkidsunlimited.org. That's a little bit about this episode. Let's just jump right into this interview with Beth Rosenberg.
So, this has been Techies Unlimited, a real labor of love for me. Really starting with my son, Jack. He was about 11 years old and he loved technology, but there was no place for me to send him because he needed a supportive environment. And then it was just like, I met this woman, she had a school, she said, you could, use my school. I was working in the field of like arts and technology as an educator. This was back in, what year was it? 2009. And, the school couldn't host us for the summer. And I turned to my husband and I said, I don't care that the school can't host it. I'm still doing a 1-week workshop. And I sort of opened up my Rolodex, what's that? I opened up my non-existent iPhone at the time and wrote some emails saying like, would you host for free, can we have a lab, at here, there, the other place? And it was like the floodgates open. Like as soon as I said technology, kids, who learn differently, autism, 1 week, give us computers in a classroom. I had a whole bunch of people that wanted to do it. And I was lucky. I was consulting at the time at the Jewish Community Center in Manhattan, and they said, bring it here. And that was in 2009. And I started with 10 students in my son's class in a summer of 2009. And then they all said, we want more. And then in February winter break, which we do here in New York, we did it again. And then we just kept doing it. So then we went February, like 2010, I moved it over to PACE because I was doing my second master's degree there. And my advisor at PACE said, bring it here and I'll give you college students. And it was literally like an organic process. And then by the time 2013 rolled around, the chair of my department, Luc Dubois, said, you know what, I heard you're doing this program and it sounds really great. And we have this, new sort of hub, this interdisciplinary hub that we're creating at NYU called the Ability Project. And maybe you could spark it by doing STEM classes here at NYU. And in the summer of 2013, we brought it to NYU. And he said to me, wait a second, are you a non-for-profit? What are you? And I said, I'm nothing. I'm nothing. I'm just like, a couple little flyers and, handing it out to people I know. And he said, well, you'll have to become a non-for-profit. And, this is NYU. And I said, okay, I'll become a non-for-profit if you come on our board. And he said, deal. And so then he lied. And in 2014, we became a non-for-profit. But we were already doing the program since 2009 in a shorter way. And then we became a non-for-profit in 2014 from 10 students to now 350 students. And it's hard work. It's a labor of love but my son, who was in the program for 10 years, tells me he's retired now, but he still really loves it. Like, we have game night for our teens, like game night, mom. He's like, I'll work the projector and pick the movie, and I'll go to Trader Joe's and even pick up the food if you want. And he's invested in it. We have a hackathon coming up called Decode the Vote on May 3rd. He'll be at the hackathon the whole day. He's a young college student now, so he wants to he's more of an alumni. But he's not a coder, but he's a great video editor, I think that he has a bit of a technology brain. He's not afraid of technology in any way. I think he learned a lot. Along the way.
Right.
Every kid's trajectory is different. But I think what happened for him is that he did love it because it was a community. And that's the part that he loves about it, the community aspect of it. So he's definitely, invested, and involved. And that's wonderful to him because it is like a place of belonging.
Absolutely. It sounds like another home for him, based on the community you've built and poured your heart and soul into.
Yeah. And he's sort of been, he's been the co-founder, sometimes my husband calls him the co-flounder, because his ideas, we things off of him all the time. Like, we never, up until a few years ago, we didn't have a teen program until he said to me, we just had a youth program. It went from like 7 to 14, 7 to 15 in the same classroom. And he literally said, he came home one day and he said, I don't want to be with the babies. And we were like, you know what, you're right. You don't have to be with the 7, 8-year-olds. You're a teen now. You should be. And then we started the teen program. Those kinds of things, which have been, so important along the way. Or even someone, for him to say, like, I don't want everything to be about coding, Mom. I don't love coding. And then to be like, well, can we do more video, more editing, more memes, more GIFs, more, things like that? Because we are project-based, and so every time you are signing up for a Tech Kids Unlimited workshop, you are doing some project. It's like a video or a game or like learning a computer language or making an stop motion video or, all of that. So, thinking about, these kids, they're not all, one side of the brain. We have many, many, many students who are absolutely creative geniuses. I mean, the animation, the GIFs, the video editing is extraordinary. And then we have some students who like the coding languages. It's rote, it's interesting, it's, once you learn it, it's palatable. But we see both ends, and not one is unique. So we go back and forth and offer both of those different kinds of programs, to make sure that these kids are proficient in various software and in technology skills. That's really what we want them to be proficient in, because you need to know Photoshop to get in a job,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You need to know how to edit a little video. You need to know what social media is. You need all of these different things, um, and depending on what you want to do, ultimately technology helps you solve problems. And I think that for all of our kids on the spectrum, you know they all need to continue to become great problem solvers. I once had a kid, a kid that we love, one of our alumni. He was in our Friday program, which is like an all-day sort of faux workplace program. And he said, "Beth, I have no money for lunch." And I said, "Oh my God, why don't you have any money for lunch?" And he said, "Well, when I came here, my Metro card had no money on it, and my mom gave me a $20 bill. So I just put the $20 bill to get my Metro card in, and I used it up." And so ultimately, what is that about? It's about executive functioning and not being able to like think ahead, right? Of
Yeah.
course, we got him lunch, but it was so interesting to to see that type of problem. Like, he didn't problem solve, right? He didn't problem solve. And of course he never did it again, but in that moment when he put that $20 bill, he could have pressed, give me a $10 Metro card instead of a $20 Metro card, but he
Yes.
wasn't problem solving. So but it never happened again because we talked about it, and it was a mistake, and he corrected it and he began to problem solve. um, so so I think that at the end of the day, if our kids can learn a little bit of problem solving, a little bit of community in terms of social, and learn a little bit of technology, um, that we've done our duty.
Yeah.
One of the things I want to say is, like, I had this great conversation with a funder of mine, prior funder, and he was just so incredible, because he was talking about workforce development and how he particularly is interested in diversity, disability,
Yeah. Nerd.
and
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh my God, thank you so much for saying that." He's like, "The statistics are 80% of people with, cognitive disability are, underemployed, unemployed." And I was like, "Uh-huh."
Yeah.
And I was like, "But I was, honey, how come other funders don't know this?" He's like, I said, "What makes my job so hard is that sometimes, like oftentimes, I have to explain to funders what is autism. Then
Yeah.
I have to explain to them this whole idea of like schooling a student with autism,
Mm.
like, why does it go until 21, on and on.
Yep.
And then the next thing I have to explain is the whole, workforce employment internship piece. And they don't get it. They like don't get it. And I said, my hope is that I can have more funders that, like, basically I just have to convince them to fund me, and I don't have to do all the other parts, because all the other parts is exhausting.
Definitely.
um I was talking to a funder last week for something we applied to, and it was such a discouraging conversation because she didn't realize that kids go to school and can have the option of going to school with an IEP until 21,
Yeah.
and exactly, that autism spectrum is a cluster, and that, you meet one person with, autism spectrum, you meet one person.
Hmm.
And she didn't know any of this. And then I looked to see, I did a little background research, and I thought, like, wow, she's about 25, 26, which is the same age as my daughter. And then I thought, wait a second, have you been living under a rock?
Right.
Like that generation should be pretty woke, with advertisements and, tons of people, who have siblings, friends, siblings, on and on and on in this day and age, with 1 in 59.
Right.
It was I had to literally go under the covers for the rest of the day. I was so upset.
Oh my goodness. That's so
Yeah.
shocking, but it's so true.
It really is. I mean, it was really funny. We try to enter into some competitions. We did like a games, we're doing podcasts, different competitions. And so my education manager, who's amazing, she, writes she writes a note to one of these competitions. I'm talking vaguely here. And she's like, well, let me explain to you, like our students that we have this special program on Fridays, we have 10 students who are like, they may be seniors in high school, but they may be in their 13th year, or they may be in a transition program, or they may have graduated community college, or they may be in community college, but they're all like, up to 21. And of course, the competition listed that the students had to be, quote, in high school. So we write a note, she writes a note, and at first glance, this organization was like, oh, okay, that sounds fine. And then the second thing, they write back and say, no, it's not fine. Because, by 18, you should be finished with high school. And, why do you have people over 21? And we were like, hello,
Wow.
it's a law that you
Yeah.
can go to school until you're 21 if you have an IEP. And guess what? Not all our kids go to public schools because our parents have to sue, to put them in a private school or a non-private school or a transition program, because they don't get services in public schools.
Yeah.
And oh my God, my beautiful, amazing education manager, it lit a fire under her. And I think ultimately they, as soon as she cited, like, this is a law. It's called the Americans with Disability Act. You can't discriminate against our kids because they didn't finish school at 18. And they allowed us into the competition. Yeah,
Good.
isn't it?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Unbelievable.
So that's kind of, in a way, like what makes our job very incredibly difficult,
Yeah.
around the education space. Because when I have to answer questions around funding, which is how many students graduated from high school, how many students are going to go to college, how many students improve their test scores, that's that's not the measurement that you take with a special needs student.
Nope,
It's not.
so different.
Right? I mean, I'm so incredibly proud of my own son, which is the reason that I started Tech Kids Unlimited with him and for him. He's 21 and he's in his first year of college at 21 years old. And, it's been, bumpy and stuff, but like he wouldn't have been able to do it at 18 or 17. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
No way. And, we have to do, like, we do a modified course schedule, and he's in a program where he gets, special tutoring and, all of that other great stuff to give him, the chance, the fighting chance. But I just feel so happy that he went to school until he was 21, that he took all of that time through his IEP, because developmentally he needed it. Yeah. Like, my favorite phrase is, there's no race to the finish line. No. There's no race. So I wish every parent that had an IEP, like, basically the school said, you know what? You have an IEP, and so we want to work with you until they're 21. And whether we're going to push you out into taking some community college classes, or there's a super senior year or whatever, but we're not having you graduate at 18.
Yeah, we don't need
Because
to
I think
rush you
that,
out.
yeah, I think that's where a lot of trouble comes in, is
Mhm.
pushing these students out when they don't have the developmental, um, wherewithal and emotional wherewithal, and just the world becomes harder for them, and because they need more time.
Mhm.
That's just a little bit of a
Yeah.
conundrum, and that I feel like we're facing. One really interesting thing that I also feel like we're facing at Tech Kids Unlimited, if I could just like talk like nonchalantly,
Yeah.
is this idea that like students will come to Tech Kids Unlimited, whether they're youth or teens, and every single student has an IEP, or is about to get an IEP, right?
Mhm.
And every single student is in like some type of, different style learning class. New York, we have this class, it's called an integrative classroom. There's like 2 teachers, 30 students in the class. Half the students have an IEP, half of them don't. So that's more of like
Okay.
an inclusion model.
Yeah.
We have this program called the ASD Nest program, where it's a specialized program and they only take students into the classroom who are diagnosed with ASD, and then they adapt the curriculum. Then we have private schools where you sue the Board of Education to get your kid into the school.
Mhm.
But you would think with all of that, right, you would think that a parent would say to their kid, like, you know what, you know why you're not going to school with your sister? You learn differently.
Yeah.
Your brain works differently. Not necessarily to label them, because I don't like labels. Like, labels are great to get services, but who knows what we have with autism spectrum. In 10 years it'll be teased out. I just went to a lecture at Simon's Foundation. It'll be teased out as multiple different types of conditions.
Yeah.
And so, whether you say your kid is ADHD or nonverbal learning disability, which doesn't exist in the DSM,
Right.
or ASD, or whatever you want to call them, just tell them, right? Tell them,
Interesting.
because literally we have students, they are teens now, and the parents have said nothing, zero,
Yeah.
nothing. And of course, all the evidence shows, right, that, you must self identify, that you do better in life if you can identify who you are. And that almost means for everything. Like, I'm a white Jewish woman from Brooklyn. And yeah, like, I'm pretty sassy and opinionated. I'm a New Yorker.
Yeah.
But I've, embraced my identity, right? Like, you're not going to get anything else. Like, you're going to, here it is. And I just feel like it's so like that we are hurting these kids so much by not saying to them, you know what, you're neurodiverse,
Yeah.
you have a neurodiverse brain, your brain works differently. And like, I just spoke to a colleague of mine at a university, and he's like, can you help me? My sister's kid, goes to like some great school. I can't remember, like Brown. I think it was Brown University. Because some of these kids, especially if you're like more Asperger's, little professor, you
Yeah.
can get into those schools, right?
Mhm.
So he says to me, but I know that he's on the spectrum. He has no friends emotionally, socially. He locks himself in his room. He's doing just okay at Brown, not great. He just, doesn't leave his room. And he's like, I just really wish that like over the summer, I could tell my sister about some social skills programs or something or something or something. And what do you think I should do? And I was like, you know what? Your sister's doing a really big disservice to your son, to your nephew. He's like, I know. He's like, but how can I tell her? And I said, that's right. You can bring a horse to water, but you can't make them to drink. Right. You can't
Mhm.
make them drink.
Right.
So I just, we're dealing with that ourselves, and to some extent, we're wondering, with our teen programs, if we should write something on our applications, they're not really applications because we accept everyone, but just more like an information taking,
Yeah.
um, is
Right
we
away.
want you to know that we will be discussing neurodiversity in this program.
Yeah.
Like, because we are discussing it. We are, we want students to see that there are strengths, that they have strengths, and that they should not be ashamed. And I think that that is what we have with autism. And so then the interesting thing is, like, what is the most urgent and pressing issue for me, is really employment.
Yeah.
It's for all these kids, back to what we were talking about before with the funder that I spoke to yesterday around employment and disability.
Yeah.
We are not doing enough around employment. And as I'm talking to you, I just got an email that the YMCA in Chicago just announced it will open Cafe Voca, a new
Oh,
coffee bar that will provide vocational training and employment for individuals with intellectual and developmental challenges. Now, that's great. Like, that is fantastic. We should have more of that. But, why is it that, basically every other organization, won't hire neurodiverse, students?
yes. There's that piece of the conversation too about inclusion in the workplace that, like, yeah, I agree. There are a lot of coffee shops opening up near us too in North Carolina, but it's not the only setting for people with
Hmm.
disabilities and neurodiversity to work in, as in your
Exactly. Whether it's a coffee shop or a candle shop or a making jewelry or like whatever. I mean, it's all wonderful and great. And
yeah.
this whole idea of autism entrepreneurship, I love. And in fact, there's a wonderful website that we created with the Flutie Foundation called
Oh,
Shop the Spectrum, and you can find in all of these autism entrepreneurship organizations there. If that's your cause, you can go there, you can find them. And it was created by our students, and actually we're redoing it in the next 3 months, because websites constantly have to be redone and refreshed.
mhm.
So if that's your cause, great. But at the same time, I would like to see tons of other organizations, hire our kids,
Yeah,
and
I
even
want
give them an internship. Like, I want an internship. Like, I want a robust internships, and where basically, excuse me, where basically you can check off on an application that you are neurodiverse, and yes, you need the interview process softened, and yes, you
mhm.
need a job coach, and yes, you need accommodations in the workplace, like you need to be able to wear your headphones, or bring all your comfort objects, or there's a sensory room for you, or whatever it may be.
Right. And that's like provided no question. Like,
Correct.
yeah,
Right.
I love
Provided no question, like as if you had a physical disability and now you need a voice to speech,
yeah.
on your computer, or you need a special chair, and that is no problem whatsoever. Why can't it be the same way if you have a
Yeah,
cognitive disability? you know um
true.
so that's my next thing. That's the piece that I'm going to be working on this year,
Super cool.
around internships and employment in a little way, like that it's
Yeah.
not, it extends our mission a little bit, but we do go till 21. So one of the things I'm really excited about is, for the first time ever, we're this summer we're going to take like 6 of our alumni kids, 6 of our students. They may be in college, or vocational community college, etc.
Mhm.
We're inviting them back for a 4 or 5 week semester, and 2 of those days it'll be all about career readiness and workforce. And then 2 days we're sending them out into the field with some of our partners that we've been working with, and who will work with them for 2 days a week in the field. And then on Fridays, they'll all have like a Zoom conversation together about, the work life paradigm, and I want to see what happens with that. It's going to be the first time where we're putting our students into the field.
Mm. Oh, wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, so I'm really excited about that. I have a great story of a parent who was telling me this exact. She said, my kid, we woke up, it's a little rainy outside, whatever. My kid's like, I want to stay at home. I'm not leaving the apartment today. And the mom said, well, you know what? I'm going to Tech Kids Unlimited because my mom friends are there and I want to hang with them. She's like, so you could stay home here or something like that. It's like, I'll get a babysitter for you. And she was like, no, I'll go. Because one of the things I'm really proud of is that we've created a community, and, to have a whole bunch of parents who decide, you know what, I could just drop my kid off there. I know they'll be happy and safe, on a Sunday. And I know I could go to Trader Joe's or, whatever, do some, weekend shopping and come back and pick them up. Or I could, bring my computer and do some of my own work, or I could sit in the kitchen area and talk to other parents, about everything. And I love that. And, we're a community, and we wouldn't really be Tech Kids Unlimited without the help of our friends. And we have an incredible community partnership with NYU Tandon School of Engineering, in the department that I adjunct in, which is called the Integrated Digital Media Program, part of the Department of Technology, Culture, and Society at NYU Tandon in downtown Brooklyn. And, we have a space there, and it's just like a wonderful community partnership, and we couldn't do this program without them. I mean, also we have an incredibly close relationship with the Seidenberg School of Computer Science at Pace University too.
Oh, wow.
And that is, those two schools, with NYU being where we conduct, 95% of our programs now. As the forefront leading partner for us, which means that kids come to us on a college campus in a beautiful state-of-the-art facility that's up to code, that where they see other college students and young people that look just like them, and they are taught by master tech teachers and assistant teachers who often go to NYU. They are undergraduate and graduate students, and other schools in the New York City area like Pace University or Hunter or Pratt or different departments around NYU. So it's a really beautiful relationship. And I think also it's also about showing the current millennial generation how important it is for them to include neurodiverse people as they age and own companies and go into the spotlight in their own careers. And I have one great example of that. I had a wonderful teacher who was a graduate student and looked for a long time, about over a year, for a UX design job in New York, and finally FedEx bit, and so he moved down to Nashville, and literally like the second week he got the job, he marched himself into the diversity and inclusion office and said, you guys, I worked for this great program and you should fund them. And last year, FED actually funded one day hackathon. And so there's that incredible give back of a young person who was, affected, just by working there, of the community that he had and seeing the students and, being with the other teachers and whatever, of saying, you know what, I'm going to give back. Or another incredible master tech teacher that we recently got back in touch with. was really funny. My son was in LA with my husband over Columbus Day last October, and they walked into a sushi restaurant, and a former, a tech teacher of Tech Kids Unlimited recognized my son and ran over to him. And of course, they started all talking and, et cetera. And then the next thing we know, like this particular, person not only sends us an end of year donation of $1,000, but then goes ahead and has his company match it.
Oh my gosh.
So, and he's like in his 20s. And so so that, I love that. I love that, like, hopefully we're, trying to move the needle in regard to students age 7 to 21 with learning differences, cognitive differences, autism, whatever we want to call it, right? Whatever the name of the day is. And that we're affecting those people, those individuals, but also all the teachers that teach them, right? I love to be able to, like, I will love to know, like, in 5-10 years or whenever, if any of those, if our current staff, get into positions of power, and they will, right? Because these are all incredible, NYU and other university, students, who are like, what, bring me the diverse candidates. I want to start an internship program. I mean, that's how we're going to change the world, I think, to some degree.
I'm curious though, so with the master tech teachers, do you provide any training with them?
Yes.
Okay.
So basically what happens is that, the funny thing is like, we've never really had to put an ad up for any of our staff.
Oh.
It's literally like we don't even have an ad on our website or anything, like nothing for job openings, because people now just come to us. And, it's like the parent is the parent marketing. It's like staff marketing. So it's like, we get this, one incredible student who's in, mechanical engineering at NYU. And then the next thing we know, we're interviewing 2 more students. Well, how did you know about our program? Because that's a different department. My friend told me about it, right? What happens is that my amazing director of operations, she, gets all the resumes and she looks at them. And you don't have to have teaching experience, but you have to like kids. You know what I mean? If you don't like kids and you are not patient and sort of like enunciate and, or maybe a little bit animated, you can come out of your shell. And if you don't have tech knowledge, all of those, that package, that we're looking for, then you're not a good fit, right?
Yeah.
But if you have that kind of general package, then we immediately, you immediately become like what we call a counselor, in the classroom. And so the counselor in the classroom, it's a classroom of no more than 20 students. And for every 3 students, there's a counselor. And the counselor sort of like walks around, like you're not supposed to sit down. You've got like 3 students, and that's who you take care of for the whole, session, whether the session is a Sunday session, which is 3 hours, or a week-long session, which is 30 hours, Monday to Friday, that we do in the summer. So then when and if the counselor feels ready, they then move up to become the master tech teacher. And the way they do that is we have a template, which includes social emotional learning and the sensory ideas that are wrapped in. And then you work with our education manager, like almost like one-on-one coaching. And let's say, you're going to teach video editing or something like that. And you develop your curriculum with the template, knowing the students now, because you've now been in the classroom, and with our education manager. Now, sometimes, occasionally, we'll get someone who is an experienced teacher, and we'll just like put them in the classroom like once or twice, and then they immediately move up to being a master tech teacher. Okay. So that's how that works. Now, we also work for every single classroom. We also have a social worker or a social work grad student that is in the classroom as well. And we love that model because, having that person there to alleviate whether it's tantrums, anxiety, motivation, all super, super important. Um, and so, I like the team approach.
Yeah.
So we also have had occupational therapists for the youth and for the teens. So we love working with OTs, especially in the summer, really important. I mean, a lot of times, there are students that really benefit from brushing. There are students that benefit from, walks or big heavy objects at breaks. Walking around with heavy objects, or even a student that like sort of needs to sit a little bit away from the classroom or in a darkened area. So that is really good to have our OT. And then this summer, I'm really excited because a speech therapist that we know came to us, a young speech therapist in the public schools. And she said, I love your program and I've had students and I really want to work with you. And we just hired her for the summer. We were like, you know what, we want to see what it looks like to have a speech therapist in the youth classroom. We think, or in the tween classroom, we think it could be really, really helpful. And so there are a lot of adults in the classroom, and I think that's what makes our model work really well, is that it's not one-to-one, right? But it's definitely, it's not like there's one teacher there, or even one teacher and one assistant. It's many more, right? So like you can, in a classroom of 20, you could have like 7 adults there. One could be the social worker. Sometimes we'll have, like in the summer, we'll have like a senior that's a psychology major who's shadowing the social worker. Sometimes we'll have that. And then we'll have like an OT, there, plus other, assistant counselors. And, every classroom's a little bit, different depending on the needs of the students. And then, sometimes parents are like, well, you know what, I'm going to bring in my own, para or see it. And we're like, great, come in. Or sometimes the parents like, I'm going to sit there in the class and do the class with my kid. And we're like, great, come in. So, all of the things in a way that I learned along the way with my own son, that things that really annoyed me, like, why can't I shadow? Like, I'm an educator. Why? And I have the summer off. Why can't I shadow my kid at, 7 years old? No, you're not allowed. I'll sign a waiver. I'll like I'm not going to sue you. Like a waiver saying I won't sue you. No, no. Like all those rules and regulations, I like them to a certain extent, but I really want to be creative and flexible with our students and their families, because every child is an individual and they should be treated as an individual.
I love that. So very much agree. So
And so we're really heavy staff, and in the beginning that was really hard for me to convince the funders. What? You're spending X amount of money on all of that staff? Until one day, this is the funniest thing happened. One of my wonderful funders, the Butler Foundation, who has funded autism programs in New York for a really long time. We were having a visit with her in the summer, and a kid ran out of the room. Of course, the social worker was with the child, screaming and having a tantrum. And my development strategist just looks at the funder and goes, that's why we have extra staff in the room. And the funder was like, I get it. I get it. So it was like, I was so nervous that the funder would be upset, but my development strategist was just, took the moment to explain the realities of the program.
Yes. I'm so glad you clarified too, because I know through running a nonprofit, like a lot of those roles unfortunately have to be volunteer sometimes, but that's wonderful to hear that a lot of those, or most of them, are paid.
Everyone is paid at Tech Kids Unlimited. Okay.
That's awesome.
Everyone is paid. I do not believe in this crazy volunteer model that other organizations have. Black Girls Code is volunteer based with their teachers, etc. And other organizations are too. I do not believe in it because I'm a tried and true educator, and there's no reason why I make X amount of money and my friend who works for Barclays makes an X amount of money. One job is not more important than the other. And my true feeling is that that if you continue to not value the idea of teaching with these types of volunteer related things, then you ultimately devalue the field of education in and of itself. So by trying to save money for the organization, you are bringing down an entire field. And my view as an educator is education is the most important thing. And so everyone is paid. It's very rare that someone is not paid. So everyone is paid. I mean, we pay like if we have a neurodiverse, self-advocate coming into our college access program, they are paid. They get a guest lecture. We have absolutely. That we don't want to. You're a neurodiverse advocate, and you want to tell people what it's like to be in college in our college access program. You're going to get a stipend. You are coming in to tell our parents on a Sunday about taxes and filing their taxes and what they are legally allowed to take off their taxes via having a special needs child. You're getting paid. Everyone is getting paid, unless you literally say to me, no, I don't need to be paid. I'm going, I want to give my money back to the organization. We have a friend of ours who is a well-known assistive technologist in New York City. He's coming in, to talk to our kids about assistive technology. He's always like, I don't want to be paid. Don't pay me. This is too important a program. So it just depends. So that is really our budget. Like most of the budget is made up of staff salary. Mm-hmm.
What are some of the things you're excited about and looking forward to in the coming months?
Yeah. And I'm also excited about the possibility of we're going to try to put a class online this year for 2020 so that we can have a student in Boston or California or Mississippi who wants to know how to, be a digital producer. They can, a class just for them, using our ideas and methodology. So we're going to try to work on that. So those are the kind of things that I'm excited about.
That's amazing. I'm excited to hear what you all get from those, running those, and what you learn from that, and that everyone.
Yeah, it's online. I mean, what we have seen is we have 3 online classes already on YouTube.
Okay.
That we did with the grant a few years ago. That we got a grant for it. One was how to make a game. One was how to make a video. And after people have done those, they're like, are there more? Yeah, are there more? But online is really the way I think to go. And one of our new board members was like, why don't we have an online component? And we were like, you're right. And so we're gonna try to, we had one meeting about it, and we're gonna just try to do it slowly. We'll just do a little pilot.
A little pilot. Awesome.
Yeah.
And then how can people listening to this episode get in touch with Tech Kids Unlimited?
So just go to our website, techkidsunlimited.org. We are on Twitter. We are on Facebook. We are on Instagram. You can sign up for our mailing list at techkidsunlimited.org. You can info, if you want to ask any direct questions, just info@techkidsunlimited.org or Beth@techkidsunlimited.org. And yes, send us students.
Yes,
We want more students.
I bet people listening to this episode are already so inspired and got so much out of it and want to check it out. So thank you so much again for being on the podcast, Beth. It was so great talking with you.
Thank you for having me. I hope to meet you one day.
All right. Thanks again so much to Beth for joining us for today's episode. You can check out everything that we talked about in our show notes on the Autism Grown Up website, which is also linked in the description of this episode, which leads me to a quick little ask. If you found value in this episode and know that others would benefit from listening to this podcast, please leave us a rating and review. This really truly helps others in the autism community find us easier online, because people like you are saying things like, hey, this podcast is real and it's real good and it's up to date and it's a helpful resource. Things like that could really help get the word out. Then I'd also like to say thank you to our supporters at Patreon. They are the ones helping us keep the show going, in a sense, through their support there. If you want to become a supporter and want to learn more about our Patreon, you can go to patreon.com/autismgrownup. And that's where we have early access to these episodes and other projects that we're working on. You can check that out there. And again, thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Autism Grown Up podcast all the way to the end. I'm so looking forward to our episode next week, and I'll chat with y'all soon.